So, chapter 3 was about effective communicating and what it kind of takes for you to be an effective communicator, especially dealing with different people from different backgrounds and different cultures. So, this chapter kind of helped us, be aware or how to identify some of those different groups and the different cultures that exist in the world today, which there are very many different backgrounds, very different values, very different beliefs, that we all are kind of products of our environment and as to where you may grow up or reside at during your childhood all the way to your maturity level and adulthood. So just jumping right in, we live with such broad and expansive cultures. There's so many of them, co-cultures, that it's important to understand kind of where the different backgrounds of where people come from, the different demographics where people come from. Once again, their core values, their beliefs, their different habits, which I think is still a learning process in America today. That's kind of been one of our growing pains, and just taking the time to learn and understand and accept the different cultures and backgrounds that we come from. That would or can help make us a better, effective communicator. Learning and understanding where people come from, basically putting yourself in their shoes. We can't help where we're born or who our family is, but what we can do is take the time out to learn the different people that reside next. Could be our next door neighbors, could be the people that we go to school with, people we go to work with. It's very important that we conduct ourselves in a sensitive manner in understanding some of those different cultures where people come from. So also too with that, number two, three specific things that I took from this reading. Number one was provisionalism, and that was just basically the ability to accept the diverse um, perceptions that are given, to each culture, and being able to understand that in a way so you can conduct yourself and be able to um, speak to people in a respective manner, and in a sensitive manner, because some of the things that may be offensive to us may not be offensive to other people, or vice versa. You have to you have to kind of take the time. Just because people are in the area to where you reside at, you never know what may be offensive to them where they're coming from. So it's always having that gratitude and just having that appreciation of having people from different cultures interact with each other, is very important. Number two was intercultural competence, the barriers to that, right? Which I took from this chapter, which was important, because those are the things that we face every day. And some of those were, anxiety, stereotyping, and also just incompatible values, right? You know, we may all enjoy each other's food, but we cook from different backgrounds, right? We all come from different backgrounds, so therefore our food may taste a little bit different. So just not, and that's just an example. Obviously, stereotyping, and some of these things which can cause anxiety, which will make it harder for you to be able to approach people coming from different cultures. And I think that's important because those are the learning curves that we have to fix and make sure that they're aware so that we can grow and be able to address them and continue to show growth in a sense of, trying and accepting other people. And then the last one was building organizational culture, which is important, right? Having having a strong leadership, and then culture. What really is culture? When you ask yourself that, and to me, it's just the values, different languages, and then also the beliefs, and then what habits a lot of these cultures do. or that they adapt from their environment. It's super important. So those were kind of three things that I took from the chapter to me that stood out the most. Number three, how does the social identity wheel link with the reading? For me, I took that it linked with the chapter basically by sectionalizing each group with the culture that it consists of, and then basically uh, making or having you helping you try to identify what is relevant for each individual, right? Because we're all different. No matter if you do or if you all come from the one same culture, you all are all different human beings. And we all have different likes, dislikes, different tastes, different visions. We're all different aspirations. And so it's important, right? Just that all consist in just one culture. So, the diversity of, having multiple cultures in the mix is just, it's a boiling pot. We live in a boiling pot. So, chapter three kind of started off with being a provisional communicator, and just possessing the skills for you to be able to understand before you even say two words to somebody, for you to be able to understand um, who they are, the way that they dress, the why do they cook the food that they cook, why do they um, believe in the things that they believe? Why do they dress the way that they dress? And being a provisional communicator, if you have those skills, you're more able to have a better conversation and have a better approach to somebody that just comes from a different culture. Number four, based on the will, what are the identities that identify with me the most? For me, I first and foremost picked off religion that I think about the most, and just keeping God first, keeping family first. The adversity we face every day, it's a tough world out here. So I'm not sure how anybody makes it without being prayed up. You have to keep God first, and just being able to call on Him for strength and guidance is important to me. So that was something off the wheel that first I identified with me. The least identified off the wheel for me was the sexual orientation. Right, I'm a proud father, proud husband to my wife. Comfortable in my own skin. Sexual orientation is just not something that honestly I think about or really ever pretty much have thought about. Um, Number six, let's see, based on the will, which of your own identities would you like to learn more about? And I picked national origin, and that was because, right, being able to travel, to embrace more cultures. Um, to me, I think the quickest way to learn somebody's culture is through food. I'm a foodie, so being able to travel and go experience. The different type of fashion of these cultures, the different type of food of these cultures, and just enjoying those different experiences is important, and that would be something that I would like to learn about the most. And then number seven, based on the wills, which identities have the strongest effect on how I perceive myself? And I put physical ability, play sports all my life, always been, had a pretty athletic body. And then start having kids, and got that good old dad bod. So just personal goal, not nothing that I'm just uncomfortable with. But I think, yeah, being in that shape and getting back to that athletic body that I possess, and it may not go all the way back, but just having that appearance would just naturally boost anyone's confidence, right? So, number eight, based on the will, which identities have the strongest effect on how others perceive you? This was kind of tough, but I picked socioeconomic status, and I just think we just live in those world where people judge and people stereotype you and put you into these different groups, based on your financial literacy, based on your education level, based on, your health. These things are all important in an everyday life. And so, I feel like I work my butt off to um, keep these things, on the forefront and, continue putting fat on my brain and raising these kids. Everything has to be strategic financially. I want to be here for a long time, so my health is important and staying aware of that. And obviously maintaining the resources, right? Sometimes it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And that's super important for me. And then obviously, last but not least, even though this should be the first one, is the education. Me and my wife do not play about education in my household. So it's a certain standard that we holding our kids to, and I would like to hold myself to that as well. Number 9, what is important to critically reflect our identities and how we see the world? Or why is it important? Excuse me. And clearly, right, it's important. And I'm just gonna answer this straight up. It's important to me, I think, because we're all children of God. Let's just speak hypothetically. If there was a God, to some of the non-believers, um, what would He expect us to do? Would He expect us to do the right thing? Would He expect us to help, one another out when times get hard? You know, I think there's always somebody watching in a bigger sense, right? Even where they're not physically there, right? We set out in this life in this journey, and we still have our parents behind, our grandparents, our younger siblings, older siblings. People are always holding us to expectations, and you know, just because we don't understand other cultures, because of the lack of knowledge or even just the lack of care to even learn. Um, I personally think that, you know, being an effective communicator can stem from how you treat people and how much you're willing to put into somebody, right? And put in that time into learning different cultures and different people. And then also being accepting people to come in and not having your gates closed where they can come in and learn you so you guys can feed off of each other. So I just think it's super important to, treat people the way that you would want to be treated, so to speak. And then in hindsight, to help you be a better learner as well. If the world had that, I think we'd easily be off in a better place at the moment. So it's just taking the time, and just which leads to my last point, which is the one thing you learned about completing this activity. And for me, it was just awareness, right? Being aware of the different cultures, right? Being aware, of how to identify those cultures. We live in Houston, which is a very diverse city nowadays, and I mean, it's super important to have, you know. To be cultured, right? To be able to understand and grasp the different cultures. And you can go to some of our restaurants, you can go to some of our neighborhoods, you can go to some of our schools and educations. And this city offers a lot and a lot of different cultures and diversity. And so with that, I just think that you know it's taught me to be more aware. Um, just to be able to understand, and I just think that'll make you a better individual, um and a stronger individual as well too, whether that be for corporate, for your job, whether that be you as a father, just understanding those cultures is super important. I live in a mixed cultured household right now, and so I just think that it's super important that, I would hate for my kids to be accepted on one side and then not accepted on the other side, just because somebody else doesn't understand their background and where they come from. So super important. We live in this world. We live in this. This is super relevant in this day and time right now. So definitely taught me a lot reading this chapter.